This is my talk, The Future Won't Be Comfortable. At IBM Watson, I worked as a design researcher and UX designer on creating systems to allow any kind of user, so from the technical to the non-technical, to set up chat robots. And I started to wonder, as AI has become a massive thing that we're talking about and engaging, as we can win in AlphaGo, or we can win in Jeopardy. What is the future of artificial intelligence, and what does that mean for when we start to imagine capabilities of AI and machine learning? So let's go back. The future that our parents imagined, I think, was this comfortable future. A lot of our concepts of the abilities of robots, so AI, come from the space age, and they come from the 1960s. The 1960s was emerging from the darkness of post-World War II, even with the looming threat of the Cold War, was galvanized optimistically by the possibility of the exploration of space and the space race, and the affordances of what technology could do for us, how far it could push us, even in our daily lives. This led to the creation of things like Tomorrowland at Disney World, to microwavable meals, to things that could enable our daily lives to be better, to go faster, to give us more time. This led to these utopian meditations on Tomorrowland. And this led to a lot of the work that we see right here. Ideas of TV watches, of jetpacks, of meal pills, or perhaps Soylent, driverless cars, and robot maids. These concepts were illustrated by Arthur Radabaugh, a commercial artist based in Detroit, best known for his work in the auto industry. We're looking at one of Radabaugh's illustrations. But these illustrations help shape the idea that baby boomers had for futurism. It shaped our parents' projects of what technology could do, and it shaped those projections. I don't know necessarily if this is the future I imagine or what I want, but it's made me think about what do bots do now? How have we designed bots based off these ideas of futurism? Taybot, made by Microsoft, learned how to harass. Siri has a hard time understanding accents, and Cortana was sexually harassed. Is this the future we imagined with bots and AI? Is this the future that we want? Amelia Winger-Bearskin, a machine learning artist and technologist and the director of IDEA, New Rochelle, and Arts Initiative, states that we are building our parents' dreams and our grandparents' dreams. This isn't a future we imagine, but we can make it happen. A TV watch is really an Apple Watch. How close are we to a driverless car? If we ask Google or Uber, probably fairly. This future imagined working class tasks and more feminized labor tasks being fulfilled by robots or chatbots, and this is something that Catherine Cross's work has explored. I wonder, as a chatbot designer, why are chatbots so gendered and named, especially assistant bots? But as a technologist and artist, for me, it's hard to imagine a future right now of a mechanized metal working class with no humans when universal healthcare is being defunded. The 1960s had the threat of the Cold War, but with the looming threat of the ACA being defunded, it's hard to imagine or create a thing that makes my food faster when I may not be able to afford groceries. As creative technologists right now, what are we dreaming? I do have an idea for what the future could be, and perhaps the future is incredibly collaborative. This is probably a good time to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Caroline, and I'm a designer and artist. I used to work at IBM Watson, and what I worked on was this idea of how do you take ideas of technology and extend them beyond to an entire group of people beyond programmers. How do you enable systems to allow anyone to create a chatbot? For the past few years, I've studied online harassment and protest inside of social networks. It's currently what I do at Wikimedia. I'm studying online harassment inside of Wikipedia. But what does this all mean? It means that I look at how language is analyzed and misused by machines. It means I look at how humans can understand and misunderstand each other, or how from a network analysis standpoint, a harassment campaign can look nearly identical to a protest campaign. And where does technology fit into this space? Now, the goal isn't to replace me. I, being an ethnographer, I have an important job. I can research, I can look and understand through digital conversations the context of the conversations. And as a human, I can suss that context out really well. I can pick up on social cues. I can learn new slang, and I can understand the intention behind those social cues. Now, social cues are incredibly nebulous. And they're very non-literal. It's hard to make something like a social cue fit into something as specific and structured as an Excel spreadsheet to feed into an algorithm. But that's where a part of my job comes into play. How do you think about collaborative systems inside of machine learning? How do you think of co-design, co-designing with machine learning, or co-designing with a very large and expansive human community, in my case, the Wikipedia community? If this sounds like a defense of co-design collaboration, it is. And then what I've begun to wonder is, how do we create systems that allow for pushback for users with these systems that they exist in? When a chatbot is presented to society, it can be proprietary and closed. It's a finished product. What is the data set being used? Where can I flag responses? How do I find transparency inside of the system that I have to interact with? And what can I do as a designer or as a user to intervene? And as a user, how can I see pushback or see cause and effect in a meaningful way? I don't need something to replace my task, but I want to think of artificial intelligence not as artificial, but as an augmented intelligence. How can I augment my experiences? Artificial doesn't necessarily mean right or better than the human experience. And I often wonder as a designer, why do we go towards AI creation, towards a humanoid or a human voice, or replicating something humans do really well? Instead, what if we think of machine learning and AI as our collaborators? What can I do, or what can I create that can augment a human experience, but using the systems that machines use really well? The future I imagine, as a UX designer that works with bots and chatbots, isn't so much these siloed workforces or a robot slave, but a space of exploring augmentation. Machines can do things really well that I cannot do. It can process large quantities of data incredibly quickly. How can I use this to extend my own experience as someone who has to work with a lot of human data across a lot of different sections and slices of human social dynamics and demographics? So I'm trying to think of machine learning as this augmented intelligence experience. Because I love this GIF, it's on 2 different slides. So what are spaces that utilize human expertise and machine expertise really well? Part of machine learning actually already does this. A part of machine learning, humans have to train the machine systems and algorithms for accuracy. This is called ground truth training. What's sort of key in reframing this context from training or maintenance is perhaps thinking of this as substantial, important, emotional, and collaborative. Part of my job is to actually create a process of training ground truth, so to process data, and then actually go through and train the system to understand the data. Data can be something like how to order a pizza. So you have to train a system to understand what a pepperoni is, it's a topping, or that there's a different kind of pizza that's already enclosed and encased, such as a vegetarian pizza, right? But you have to create all these different sub-slices of what is inside of this system. It's systems thinking. It's very useful and it's very utilitarian. But I want to think of ground truth training and data collection as this necessary part of having a collaborative experience with machine learning. But moving forward, how do you also think of ground truth training and data collection as a form of protest? Can the data we feed these systems be viewed as an art project or protest? Can these systems be viewed as more symbiotic? And what does that start to look like? In a practical version, this is already coming into existence with Google's Perspective API, which was designed to help moderators look and analyze toxic language inside the commenting sections of various spaces. They are also working with Wikipedia. But right now it's being used with the New York Times moderation team, which is a team of journalists that go through and hand moderate the comments that exist across all of the New York Times. Due to such a high level of contentious interactions within the commenting sections, they started to turn it off or not even create spaces for commenting sections on specific articles. Perspective has been folded into their daily workflow to enable them to actually start introducing the commenting sections back to these different kinds of to these different articles. It doesn't replace moderators, but helps augment the workload in a meaningful way to actually create spaces for more conversation. Facebook has already hired 3,000 more moderators for their platforms to try to combat online harassment. Clearly, there is a need in this space for human augmentation, especially as we look to machine learning to understand language and potentially mitigate online harassment. But this is where it's key if you're creating any kind of system that understands the context of something as specific and as hard as conflict versus harassment, abuse versus a misunderstanding, a good faith argument or a bad faith argument. Bots are really bad at being human, but bots are really great at being literal. And bots are really great at analyzing system patterns, especially if a human can guide can guide those patterns. In practicality, I can give you an example from my own work. For the past 6 months as an Open Lab Fellow at BuzzFeed and Eyebeam, I've been studying the rise of the alt-right. I'm reading neo-Nazi blogs, so you don't have to. What I've noticed is the state of online harassment has changed since the election of Donald Trump. It's become very politically charged. Prior to starting my fellowship at BuzzFeed, I had spent the past 2 years studying online harassment, and very specifically studying Gamergate. This changed the entire scope of my workload when the election happened. Harassment became much more politically charged inside of the different ecosystems I was studying, which are 4chan, 8chan, and Reddit. Again, some pretty specific places to study. But what I noticed that was really fascinating was the rise of specific terms that lacked a sort of common understanding. I'm showing you perhaps a more timid view of this hate speech dictionary I've been putting together, meaning there's a lot more in there. But I've been thinking about how these words would appear inside of any kind of system that would be analyzing language. Do these seem inherently like toxic or hateful words? Do these seem like inherently racist words? No, they're just words that are unknown to a system. But could a system understand the meaning of what the Daily Stormer is? It's a neo-Nazi blog. Or what traditionalist means. It's a specific kind of community that comes out of neo-Nazism. It's a return to a traditional lifestyle that also promotes a lifestyle for just whites only, and also the removal of Jews. Would a machine necessarily know that? And they wouldn't. I think of this data set as a form of protest and also a form of my art practice to highlight bias inside the systems we exist in. My application to BuzzFeed and Eyebeam had a provocation: can machine learning mitigate or analyze online harassment? I think that it can, but there are certain things we have to teach machines. And this is where a lot of my practice becomes incredibly collaborative. I have to teach a machine to understand what these words are, which means I have to teach all these different slices of what these words mean. Some words inside of the alt-right are neo-Nazi, some are white supremacists, and some are white nationalists. There are some words that exist inside of Twitter that are really good. It's like teaching a child. This may be really hot, this may be really warm, and this may be really cold. You have to show all the different slices of that. This database actually is currently being used by ProPublica for their Documenting Hate project. Additionally, this research has been guided by a collaboration between myself and the Southern Poverty Law Center. I'm designing it to try to highlight the kind of toxicity that can exist inside of these systems. But could an AI system alone recognize these words without the guidance of an ethnographer? It probably couldn't. And in fact, it can. This is an example of Google's Perspective API, which is still in alpha. And while it can recognize contiguous kinds of regular interactions, it can't recognize this statement. According to the ADL, this is the most popular white supremacy phrase. But what makes it hateful? Is it secure plus exist, and that predates future and white children? Or is it the intentionality behind the statement and who uses it? How would you teach a system this kind of context? You need guidance from a human counterpart. You need someone to highlight the context of this. So I've been thinking about, with the creation of this data set, how I can then move this into the work I've been doing into a more kind of symbiotic and collaborative space. So I created an art project with my collaborator, Ross Goodwin, and we are creating a system in a way to annotate Richard Spencer's tweets, like live annotation, and then hopefully create enough of a data set to where it can start auto-tagging. How exactly are we going about doing this? Well, we're using chatbot infrastructure called wit.ai. A lot of this is trying to highlight the dog whistles that exist inside of the text that he creates and the kinds of statements he makes. Again, things that can read innocuous to us actually aren't innocuous at all. I still think it's funny that we're using chatbot software to annotate this corpus. This is another project that I'm doing with my collaborator, Francis Singh, where we scraped all the images out of the alt-right subreddit and out of the Donald subreddit. And we're trying to create a corpus, different kinds of mimetic culture and memes that exist inside of the alt-right. So we're having to go through and hand tag. This is a screenshot of just something I was doing earlier today. The idea is eventually we will have enough different kinds of groups of sections of the images that exist inside of this space. And again, a lot of these things are using more hidden terms, such as white pill, which is a hashtag that is used by the alt-right for when they're feeling bad and they want to see something good that promotes white identity. Look through it at your own risk on Twitter. It's often pictures of white women or children. The hope is that we can generate enough data where a human won't have to auto-tag every day, but it can start to be filled in with the help of an algorithm. And that an algorithm can help then look at new emerging microtrends that emerge inside of this data set. The idea is that it's a collaborative space together. What does shared emotional labor look like between human and machine? Well, we're trying to figure it out with these series of experiments. So the opening slide was a bit of a misnomer. The future isn't comfortable. I don't think it's about Roombas or front desk assistants. I think the future is about collaboration and data. Currently, as a bit of a break from the previous projects, I've been thinking about a way to create more protest data sets. I view the previous work I've been doing as my own way of punching a Nazi. How do you analyze language that exists inside of these public systems we use, but also how do you shine a light on it? But then I've been thinking more and more about how do you create something that's a reaction to this hate speech database and dictionary. I've been wanting to create a collaborative feminist data set, one that requires collection and training. I want to create more equity inside of machine learning, but to do that, I need more data, and I need unbiased data. We need intentional data, we need consensual data. Data people choose to give up, data that collectively we can train together, data that people can help build out. When I dream of the future of artificial intelligence, I don't dream of an AI assistant. I dream of collaborative systems. I dream of patterns created from human whimsy and open source data and open source image archives. I dream of transparency, but I don't dream of Hal or Rosie. What can we build when we stop building our parents' dreams and we start dreaming our own dreams around artificial intelligence? Thank you.